All right, we are live. Silver Doctors live on air. It is Monday, the 20th day of the month of January. Excited to be back for some more back and forth, and also interested in finding out what's going on outside of the subject matter we're going to cover today. My name is Mike, co-host with my better half, Mr. Half Dollar. How you doing, sir?
Doing good today, Mike. Happy Monday to you. You know, it's interesting because there's so much news going on today that we're going to be talking about stuff that people don't even realize is going on.
Like always.
Because everybody's so focused on just a few things here in the States, right? But there's so much going on that doesn't get covered in the MSM. So Let's welcome everybody and get right into it.
All righty. So let me open up some windows and close a couple windows here. So if you don't mind, go ahead and glance to the chat. And you can acknowledge a couple people while I close a couple windows on my end.
Okay. Well, we only got a few people tuned in right now that are in the chat anyway. We got Jason, we got Big Bubs, we got Rowdy Yankee. So thanks everybody for participating. We got about 30 people watching us on the stream right now, Mike.
All right, sounds good. So with that being the case, as always, let's be short and concise and dive right into the nitty gritty. So with that being the case, how do you want to kick it off this afternoon, soon to be afternoon?
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to kick it off with just talking about China for a second. We don't spend a whole lot of time talking on China that much. And, it's interesting because I'm kind of torn between it. Because for a while ago, I bought into the whole, they're rolling out the gold-backed yuan and they're going to pull the plug on the dollar, because you got people that are talking about that. And it's like, well, where is it and when is it? And what if X's just a bought and paid for globalist anyway? Then it's not happening, right?
Right.
So I'm kind of torn one way or another between the whole China thing, but there are still several important things that have just happened last week and then this week that what we're talking about here, whether you subscribe to the different theories on the gold-backed yuan or not, or China's got 30,000 tons of gold, or China's a superpower, they're not a superpower. Here's the bottom line. The shift moving from west to east is indeed real. Mm-hmm. And what that is it's like a political economic shift of power. Right. So we're talking about the decline of the Western civilization, and we're talking about the rise of the Eastern civilization, specifically China, also India and places like that.
Yeah.
So we'll dive right into it here. We're good in the chat and everything's going good, right, Mike?
All right, so everything should be going good. And for those that are tuning in, real quick, give me a thumbs up if the volume on my side is good, because as always, I end up listening to a little bit of the replay, and for whatever reason, the volume was not. And so the mic's here, everything's flashing green on my side, so it's a go on my side. But for some reason, when it gets out there, it may not be a go. But with that being the case, we're going to keep moving unless I hear something otherwise. So let's dive right into it then.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing some thumbs up, so that's good. Well, here's the first link. So this is anecdotal. So this just blows the whole booming economy narrative out of the water. Mm-hmm. So I just sent you a first link from Business Insider.
Okay.
And this was actually published last Thursday. And this kind of was off of the radar from a lot of places. And I actually wrote about it this morning. We actually talked about this a little bit offline after our show on Friday.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have time to get to it. But Bose, right? They make speakers, they make headphones, really quality stuff. It all used to be made in the United States. Now it's made in China, but there's something very interesting that happened, right? We talk about the retail apocalypse a lot, and we talked about Pier 1 just a couple weeks ago, not even 2 weeks ago. Well, last week, Bose announced that they're closing down every single store in the United States. Every single store in the United States.
Yeah.
Where are they not closing down their stores? In China.
Yeah.
In India. And read what the CEO of Bose said. This is amazing what they said. Because if you can just glean from this like reality, right?
Yeah.
At the time, it was a radical idea. They're talking about when they opened their first store in the United States. Mm-hmm. But we focused on what our customers needed and where they needed it. Mm-hmm. And we're doing the same thing now. So what does that mean, right? That means that the vice president of sales, of global sales, is telling us that where Bose needs to focus now is China. Right? Mm-hmm. It's not the United States, it's China. So that's just kind of like point one, right? Mm-hmm. This is one of those things where, well, what is exactly this shift of power from west to east? Well, this is part of it, right? It's a decline in the Western consumer and a rise of the Chinese middle class, right? Everybody wants to talk about how China is such a backworlds, third world, this and all that, but they are actually growing and increasing their wealth. That's point number one. Yeah. So that's food for thought. Every single Bose store is closing down in the greatest economy ever, right? That does not make sense.
Right. Mm-hmm. So let me add to that real quick. So I've been covering the whole transition from the west to the east for quite some time now. So I follow the China situation extensively, probably more than I should, because I believe it's a part of the shift out of the dollar paradigm into whatever is going to be dealt our way. So another thing this tells me is the fact that there's about 1 billion plus Chinese that are pretty much not in the main economy as of yet because they're heavy savers, while on this side of the world we're heavy consumers. And so as we become more as we're less of a cash cow as far as our consumption of all these technological goods or whatnot, it's only obvious that the next line of consumers will be generated from the Eastern Hemisphere, from China. So they're going to basically all those ghost cities that 3, 4, 5 years ago people thought was just malinvestment. It was pre-investment in the fact that they knew 5, 10 years from now all those cities will be populated. Therefore, they got all the mall infrastructure ready. All that stuff is ready. They just now need to issue their population a credit system that's similar to ours to create buyers of that magnitude. So yeah, it's just going to be a switching of the guard, switching of everything that we are used to. So yeah, that's a big narrative.
Yes, definitely. It is a big narrative. Like we hear about and that's one of the interesting things about Apple in the middle of this trade war and everything, because Apple sells more iPhones in China. I don't know if they do now with the trade war over the last couple of years, but it used to be that they sold more iPhones in China than they did in the United States. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is definitely a real shift. And I would agree with you. It's kind of like that. I mean, I know it's a cheesy reference and it's from way back when I used to watch movies, but if you build it, they will come, right? That kind of thing. But yeah, exactly. I mean, if you build it, then they will come, and they've got this infrastructure already in place, right? Whereas our infrastructure is crumbling. So this is just like, on the surface with like the average person, right? And it's not like, you can't say it's like, well, this is because it's a different culture, because music is universal, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody listens to music in all of cultures. So that's point number one. Then point number two, which gets into more specifically that we like to talk about, the Chinese are celebrating their Lunar New Year right now. Mm-hmm. And next week, I was looking for the exact dates, right? So next week, the Shanghai Gold Exchange, actually all the Chinese markets for that matter, are going to be closed all week long as part of their celebrations. So as I'm going over there to the Shanghai Gold Exchange website to get their trading hours and holidays, the first thing I noticed is something that just hit their website this morning, and it says the launch of the Shanghai Macau Gold Road project just started, Mike, just started. The fascinating thing about this, right, is just in the last paragraph, and actually the last couple sentences. And let me just read this, and then we can talk about it here for a second. The Shanghai Gold Exchange, under the high-level opening of the market infrastructure, the Shanghai Gold Exchange will further explore cooperative opportunities among gold markets of the Belt and Road countries and comprehensively assist in the development of the real economy, the internationalization of the Renminbi, and the construction of the Shanghai International Finance Center. I mean, this is like major power structures standing up here. And isn't it? And there's like, I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat a couple times here, right? Because Hong Kong's going down the gutter, right? Hong Kong's in this recession. They got these crazy protests and civil unrest and violence and all this stuff going on. Shanghai is quietly standing up in its place, and nobody's talking about this, Hong Kong, remember, is one of the top 5 financial centers in the world. What if Shanghai becomes in the top 3? This is more evidence of that. So I'll just stop there. I have another tinfoil hat thing to put on in a second, but I want to get your thoughts on this.
All right. So the Belt and Road Initiative, as I've highlighted and mentioned several times before, is the foundational and is a key cornerstone to the issuance of whatever that next world monetary unit will be, as well as what it looks like. It's starting to look like, with the Chinese social credit score and the heavy surveillance via the cameras and fingerprint, all the very less privacy friendly instruments that's being rolled out is going to be issued and come from that region. So we're all going to be forced into whatever they're doing now will unfortunately trickle out into the rest of the world, where it's already starting to be built in Africa right now with the heavy investment into the African infrastructure and the governments giving up their freedoms and rights for funding for development. So basically the African continent will be one big surveillance continent. And then here in America, we're unfortunately going to go the same route, because once again, as more people lose their wealth and the privileges, and as this whole Virginia situation today unfolds, there's going to be a lot of unhappy Americans. Therefore, they're going to crack down and grow even more, which is going to be more Orwellian in nature. So that's how this is going. So they're leading the world. They're leading the way to whatever's coming next. So
They are. And I find it interesting because, last year we talked about that swine flu that was decimating the pork population in China.
Yeah.
And right now there's a mystery viral influenza spreading through China right now.
Yeah.
And think about this, right? There's a mystery illness spreading that's potentially pandemic in nature. At the week where 3 billion Chinese are set to travel. I talked about this in my Outlook this morning, but with this New Year lunar celebration, it's basically like a 2-week-long celebration, and billions of Chinese are going to be traveling while there's this mystery virus spreading. Is it any coincidence? Because I think about it like this, right? What happened in Hong Kong? I mean, they're in recession. They're having huge troubles. Their property bubble, it looks like it's burst. I mean, basically, with the unrest and the civil unrest here in Hong Kong, it's destroying the economy in Hong Kong. Yeah. What would a pandemic do if it hit mainland China right now? A nasty pandemic. And would it be a designer pandemic, as in bioweapons released there on purpose for the purposes of bringing down the Chinese economy and destroying the Chinese economy because the deep state and the globalists realize that China is in fact rising in power here and they want to slow that rise and keep the perpetuity of the dollar going for just a little bit longer? So I'll take my tinfoil hat off. Any thoughts on that?
All those scenarios that you just gave us could actually be a possibility. And so we're at the point now where we don't know, we won't know until we look back when we try to connect all the dots. But at this point, it's pretty much fair game, open game to speculation on anything, because once again, none of this is coincidental in my personal opinion. All this is strategically being done in one form or another. And at this point, what's the worst part about this is that to keep this mainstream narrative going of the petrodollar system as it has been revealed to us over the last couple of decades, there's nothing that the powers that be will not be willing to do to keep this thing going. Therefore, there's no respect of human life. There's no respect of property. There's no respect of anything other than keeping this going. So all gloves are off at this current point, in my opinion, to where I'm not surprised at much. So anything you throw out there to me is a possibility. So
yeah. And I mean, we know bioweapons exist, right?
Yeah.
And we know that they're used, and we know that they're used targetedly on individuals, and we know that they're used in mass too.
Yeah.
So just to wrap up my final thought here, as far as China goes, my point overall that I made to get out in my writing this morning in my weekly Outlook is that there is so much sketchy data and statistics coming from not just China, but from the US. So we really don't have a clear picture of exactly how good or how bad things are in the market and in the economy because of all this sketchy data and outright lies and fabrication of statistics. Yeah. Therefore, we must use examples such as the examples with Bose as concrete evidence, right? Because our governments and China is lying one way or another. So by Bose saying, hey, we got to pull the plug on everything in the United States and we're going to shift our focus to China, that's concrete evidence right there, because that cuts through all the lies and all the propaganda. Yeah. So anyway, that's just what I wanted to conclude with that on China.
And so I'm looking at the chat a little bit. So also for those that have thoughts or anything you might want to chime in with, feel free to highlight at Silver Doctors. We'll touch on that. And then so Albert S. says China GDP is still 6%. And so without me actually knowing the full factors of how they calculate that, because every government at this current point, they all have their adjustment of their figures to make everything look better than what it probably really is in reality. So with China 6%, apart from the fact that if all the nations around them are slowing down, and I would imagine that most countries and consumers themselves aren't really purchasing as much goods directly from China, how are they still 6% or whatever figure they're giving us? So is exactly how are their conditions so great where the world around them is crumbling? And then we've talked about several times where there's been banking crises within the country there where the PBOC has come in directly. So once again, how things so good for them and it's not for the world? Because the world buys everything from them. So if we're not buying as much or they're not shipping as much, and you've mentioned several times where, the railways and all the logistical things aren't really moving as fast as much as they used to, how's their economy so good? So I would leave me to question exactly 6%. Oh, okay, yeah. So,
exactly. It's almost like they've got their own booming economy narrative over there. So basically we talk about this multipolar world, right? And that's what this is, right? It's basically you're now winding up with two anchors.
Yeah.
And what are the anchors? The booming economy in the US and the booming economy in China. And those are going to be the anchors in this bipolar world. people talk about multipolar, but right now it's looking bipolar. So we'll have to kind of see how that plays out. Yeah. And these are long changes, right? These are changes that happen over time, but they pick up speed more and more. So it happens slowly, and then you start really seeing the effects. Like just last year, that's when China came into the COMEX and started offering those Renminbi financially settled only gold futures products. Remember that? So think about that too. China's got their foot in London. China's got their foot in the COMEX. China's got their foot everywhere. They're going to know when that gold has gone out of the COMEX. They're going to know when there's problems in London. They're going to know all of these things first, and they're building up their own systems right alongside with it as the other systems fall down.
Yeah. So looking at the chat a little bit, it looks like there's a little bit of back and forth as to a number figure for the China's GDP. And so Albert S. says, look at the China power consumption. And so it's one of the things where I personally not sure where to go find out that information. So Albert, feel free to send us a link or whatnot. We would love to dive further into that. So, but once again, like, I'm not for or against or saying China's numbers are fake or false. It's just I question everything because I know the goal is to keep this system going until, especially it's in China's best interest to keep everything as is until they get the last bar of gold or silver from whatever nation or whoever the supplier is outside of what they're mining. So until they're tired of this current paradigm, I can anticipate all types of fake numbers and false numbers. But along the way, if you know all this is happening, like, you read the fact that the Belt and Road Initiative is basically beginning to really take off now with this financial mechanism they're creating to better unite those countries. And they're going to be doing that outside of dollars. So I would imagine pretty soon there's going to come some news within the next, I'm trying to throw out a time frame just as a guesstimate. I'm saying under 5 years, there's going to be an announcement from that part of the world, which opens up the door to some type of official announcement that petrodollar system is either dead or we'll only take yuan for transactions in this part of the world. Therefore, cash in your dollars now or something like that, because that's when they're going to unload all that debt they're sitting on in the form of treasuries or whatnot. So, time is coming. Time is coming, I do believe.
And there's a lot of people that say, China can never do this Belt and Road. It's just big time malinvestment one way or another. But I don't know. I mean, they keep making progress on it, right? It's kind of like Amazon. Everyone's like, Amazon, well, they're just some money losing, whatever. But, I keep seeing more Amazon trucks rolling around on the interstates,
Oh, my goodness.
And, just the point is that they keep pushing forward and pushing forward and pushing forward. And I guess the question is, if it is malinvestment, could there come a point where malinvestment becomes good investment? I guess if that even made sense. Because I guess it's like if you stick with it long enough and stick it out, you can eventually overcome it. I guess that's the point there, assuming that it is malinvestment. I don't assume that it's malinvestment because I see it as incremental steps one way or another. Remember, the Shanghai Gold Exchange didn't even exist until 2016. And now they got their foot in the door in the COMEX. Now they're opening up a brand new gold road project. So this is real. This is totally real. Whether they're unrolling a gold back yuan and flipping the switch on the dollar or not, that doesn't even matter in the grand scheme of things because the rise is what is important. And their rise is our decline.
Yeah. And so the infrastructure is already there. Like just when I saw that the BRICS was being formed earlier in this decade or earlier, I think it was 2011, 12 is when it was officially announced or something like that they were talking, and they've had meetings every year since then. And so I'm going to imagine when those closed doors meetings, they're talking about how they can prepare and begin the next world order, whatever they have in mind. And I think it was the former Brazilian president. I forgot his name, but I read an article, I think from Zero Hedge, and they were talking about how they were quoting him as saying that a part of the plan of forming the BRICS was to basically begin the issuance of whatever currency they were going to use amongst themselves, which was not dollars. So I would imagine that's still a part of the plan. So everything that's being done, all the effort they're putting into this infrastructure and investing all around the planet has to do with whatever they foresee as a part of their 10, 20, 30-year plan, as I always mention. So, and unfortunately, the U.S. is not involved in any of those negotiations.
Yeah.
None of them.
And think about this too, right? What's one of the ways that we get at China? We get at China through the BRICS, right? So some people might not even know that the BRICS is a thing or what the BRICS is, but what we're talking about is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. That's the BRICS, and it stands for an allegiance of 5 nations. So how does the United States get at China? One of the ways they do that is by going after the other ones, right? We got our hands on all sorts of crazy stuff in Brazil right now. Well, Russia. I mean, Russia, come on. They're our enemy numero uno. Yeah. India, well, we got Modi as a lapdog for us, and he's so far, following every order that we bark out to him. And then South Africa, I'm not keen on South Africa one way or another, but I do know that there's a lot of internal problems in South Africa, especially a couple years ago. We were talking about all those land confiscations and this repatriation, or not repatriation. What do they call it? Something or other, where they were like basically taking the lands, right, from the white farmers and redistribution. That's what you would call it. Yeah. So the point is, we can attack all those other nations to indirectly attack China and try and weaken the BRICS.
Yeah. And that's the goal all along, is to cause chaos and pandemonium. And along the way, one of the things I saw this morning was an article about the wealth gap disparity and how it's grown significantly. And a part of, we're going to touch on the Davos for a quick second, but a part of what's happening in Davos this week will be how they can further the increase of their wealth without making it look so obvious. And of course, it's going to be climate control. So it looks like the central bankers and the banks and all the wealthiest, they're going to try to now, address the concept of climate control. And I guess whatever that girl is, Thunberg, or she's going to be speaking. She got Person of the Year. She's going to be speaking there and all that good stuff. So what that is a tax. They're going to tax us for using stuff they sell to us. Anyway,
exactly. I haven't been on the Davos thing too much this year. Is that going on like right now, or is it not started
starting
yet?
This week, it's going down right now. So if you just type in Davos, you'll get the pre-narrative of what they want us to believe and what's going on. And so here's an article I just pulled up here. It says CNN Business, Trump versus Thunberg, the climate crisis could dominate Davos. So they're basically telling us what they assume and anticipate the primary conference is going to be about, and it's going to be about climate. Never the fact that the world is at complete monetary and economic chaos right now. Richer are getting richer. They won't talk about that, but they're going to talk about climate. And I guess this young lady is going to be leading the way.
And remember, this is let me give like a kind of a little market update, not about things specifically, but there's some really interesting stuff with the markets right now. And it has to do with Davos too, and it has to do with China too. But we're in a very precarious situation here. And, next week, China's markets are closed all week. And next week, there's also the 2-day FOMC. We can talk about that. And then there's Davos going on. So my point is, there are a lot of events from now until the end of next week that could move these markets one way or another. We know if the cartel can smash, they're going to smash, right? But here's my point with that Davos that you're bringing up. 2 years ago, we had this dollar chaos because I think it was, I can't remember the chain of events, but it was I think it was Steve Mnuchin came out talking about a weak dollar, and the dollar immediately started plummeting. And then President Trump came out and started talking about a strong dollar. And it's one of the only times he was like pro strong dollar. He's mostly been pro weak dollar throughout the presidency so far. But it was Davos when we had some serious whipsawing back and forth with the dollar. And that also included some serious whipsawing back and forth with gold and silver. So here's my point. There are very specific events over the next 2 weeks that could cause the cartel to want to come in and smash gold and silver here. So anybody who's a stacker looking for opportunities, there might be opportunities. But on the other hand, there could be an event that is unforeseen, such as what's going on in Virginia. That will be like a black swan event that the mainstream media is not even touching. We could get into that too. I mean, there's so much news going on, but these are things that could boost the metals and people could miss out, and we could begin that next leg up immediately. So thoughts on any of that, Mike, just how events affect the markets?
Yeah. And so it's one of my, one thing I'm going to continue to preach from this point on, right now is the best time, regardless of, whatever might happen around us. It might go up a couple dollars, a couple down, a couple cents, or whatever the price might look like in nominal terms. Use this time right now, which is probably going to be the best opportunity for you to redeem some of those notes and get back into sound money. So with that being the case, as I mentioned, your specialty is making sure you follow the details of everything. I'm telling people, just get it. Like, don't waste no time. Like, whether it's 50 cent lower, 50 cent higher, just get it. Just
Oh,
Yeah.
Mike, we kind of hit on this earlier. Albert S. said Judy Shelton will bring rates to zero. Mike, Judy Shelton is actually officially nominated now. She hasn't been confirmed by the Senate, so that still has to happen. But I went to look, right, and I actually put up an article about this, I think this morning or yesterday. But she's now actually been formally nominated. It's on WhiteHouse.gov. It's not just on President Trump's Twitter feed, his personal Twitter feed, right? But here's the thing. I had to go back and look at it because I couldn't remember where it was that she stood. Because remember on Friday I said that, she can't be good for gold and bad for gold at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was last July, before the Fed's meeting and before they had even cut rates at all, she was pushing for a 50 basis point cut in interviews on TV when there was those rumors circulating she was going to get nominated. And like a couple weeks later, when the Fed actually had their July FOMC, that's when they cut rates for the first time, and they only cut them by 25 basis points. So think about that. Judy Shelton wants to be even more aggressive than the Fed at cutting rates. Now, that's someone who's good for gold. I mean, not really as far as like the long-term horizon and the picture of the United States and the debt and the finance and all this and all that. Of course not. That's not good for gold. That's anti-gold. And then additionally, she is also a proponent of ZERP. So she's talking about getting rid of the Fed excess reserves on banks, which essentially means that she's pro-ZERP. And there's a whole bunch of other examples about how she wants to go lowering rates and closer to the zero bound there. So thoughts on any of that?
Not surprised at all. And so once again, like whoever is recommended or positioned in the Federal Reserve, until there's actually some type of awakening to where they're able to be transparent and we're actually able to see what's going on behind those doors, they can nominate pro whoever. But yet, once again, if they're talking about continuing on the same narrative of low dropping rates and QE, that's not even officially QE, but it is, and then also getting involved in the hedge fund realm as far as buying assets or liabilities directly, it's going to be more of the same. And so I anticipate the same narrative. I don't anticipate nothing different until someone loses control of the system or something gives somewhere else, and then it trickles in to the mainstream economy. So that's just what I expect. So I'm not surprised at all. I don't have any hope that she's going to, end the Fed or audit the Fed or none of that stuff. So, but before we move on, we do have a call. Let's see if we can get this person on here. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from? Hello?
Hello.
Hi there.
I just wanted to call and tell you, for probably the worst thing I've ever seen was this damn video that you put out. I enjoyed reading your comments on my smartphone, but as far as that video goes, the damn thing comes on for about 2 seconds, then shuts off for about 10 seconds, back on again for 2 seconds, back off again for 15, 20 seconds.
All right, what video are you referring to?
I can't understand what the hell's going on because you never get the opportunity to ask or reply for anything.
Okay, so what video?
On my phone.
Yeah, what video are you referring to?
That's the worst thing I've ever seen.
So okay, not understandable. What video are you referring to?
I'm on AT&T.
Okay, so my question is, what video are you referring to?
Terre Haute, Indiana.
Okay, well, so I'm not quite understanding exactly. You say something about a video. I'm curious to find out exactly what. So what video are you referring to?
Well, you were talking about Judy Shelton.
Judy Shelton.
You were trying to talk about Judy Shelton. Every time you say Judy, it's shut off.
Oh.
And then they come back on, and it's Shelton, then it's shut off again.
So, yeah.
I thought, how in the hell do you watch a video like that? I've read scholars' remarks. I enjoyed reading them. But by the same token, that video, once you came out with it sucks.
All right, well, we'll work on that. So as always, we're up against a big giant here as far as the deliverer of this content. So stick with us and just continue to hang on there, and things will get better in time. I appreciate you calling.
Yeah, I was wanting to see what you had to say about gold and silver. They talk about that all the time, but the damn thing never goes no place.
And so don't anticipate it to go nowhere until everything around you goes completely chaotic. And then at that point, I believe you're going to see some activity. But in the meantime, take advantage of the manipulation is what I like to say. But thanks for calling in, my friend. Appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right.
We didn't really talk, we've gone 30 minutes already here today, Mike, and we didn't really talk about what's going on in Virginia. But, I talked about that in my Outlook this morning, like as far as people that don't understand what's going on in Virginia. But one of the things that I find interesting is, it just goes to show you where the alliance is, and that it's propaganda 100%. Because I go to CNN this morning and they got that, Harry blasted up there, and they got, the coverage in Virginia in a little teeny tiny footnote, and it's saying like, oh, those armed militias could cause violence, and it's that spin on it. So, this is something that's very important, and the mainstream media is not even covering it. And I've said in my article, unfortunately, they're not going to cover it unless there's some sort of like event that happens, right? Yeah. And that would be good.
Now, to your knowledge, I know you follow our president's Twitter feed pretty heavily. Has the president even mentioned anything happening in Virginia at this current moment?
Well, as of this morning and on until we're speaking right now, I'm not sure. What he did do is on Friday, he tweeted out about it, and then he retweeted that again on Saturday.
Yeah.
So he has, in fact, been vocal in naming the Second Amendment and naming Virginia by name. So in the question that I posed this morning is why? Why is that a clarion call to get more people into Virginia? And then if it is, why is it a clarion call to get more people into Virginia? We talked about it, how there's speculation that this is some sort of testing ground. Just to also, I think it could also be more than just a testing ground. If there's not a false flag or a false flag hoax, then it could be a way to engage how the popular support is for various issues and how the popular mood is. And, because Americans really haven't taken to the streets yet. And even this protest, it's taken to the streets, but, we haven't seen 1960s style taken to the streets. And when that comes, that's going to be really nasty and really ugly. So it might be just a way to get a feel for, are we at that place in time yet? Any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, so I've been watching several videos and just news reports from within a Virginia news mainstream media there. So it looks like as of today, I believe as of the end of last week, there was a national emergency declared because you have your regular gun-carrying citizens going to show up to the Capitol with their guns. But then also I heard something about Antifa making their way on this side of the country as well, and them showing up as well. So out of the governor's desire to keep the peace, he said no guns allowed, no this and no that, which even made things even worse because now you're telling people they can't carry their guns at the same time you're looking to remove a lot of their freedoms with carrying and owning certain types of guns and whatnot. So it is a test ground, I do believe, and depending upon what happens with this after today, we'll see what their further steps are, but it will not be favorable, put like that, for every other state.
Yeah, and I've been watching some of it. I actually put a live feed in my Outlook this morning. I added that in a little bit later. So there's actually a live feed you can check out on an article. But guess who's doing the live stream? RT, right? Fox News isn't there. CNN isn't there, right? Reuters isn't there. The Associated Press, it's RT. And they got that disclaimer that says they're funded in whole or in part by the Russian government. So we got to go to the Russians to get our news on Second Amendment rights. This is such a messed up world that we live in, Mike.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So let's check in with the chat and then get ready to dial back a little bit and get your guys' thoughts on what's going on in Virginia. Is this just the beginning of something or will it dial down? Curious to find out in the chat. And then we'll get ready to dial back and get ready for more news throughout this week because definitely between now and Wednesday, there's going to be a lot of things to cover. And we'll do our job to try to bring it to you with a different perspective. And let's give you a chance to share your thoughts as well. And so it says, I bought an Equinox last week. It says Virginia equals the only time Democrats approve a wall. Gold and silver, a window to close soon, about 5%, then perhaps another leg down. And what else we got there? So nobody actually, no comments stand out. And we do have our last call here. Let's see if we can get to this one and see what's going on. All right, hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Oh, hi, Mike. This is Al from Pennsylvania.
Al from Pennsylvania. How you doing?
Yeah, I had a question regarding Putin, Russia and Putin.
Yeah, go ahead.
Last week I heard that Russia or Putin fired his cabinet and is reorganizing the government. I've also heard that he has nationalized the central bank. I don't know if that's true or not, but what are your thoughts?
Great question there. And so, any other thoughts? And we'll answer this off air or off the line.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. I'll hang up and listen. Okay.
All right. Appreciate you, my friend. Thanks for calling.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Mr. Half Dollar. Any thoughts there?
Yeah. Just my thoughts are in general. is he a globalist or not? Is he a deep state globalist essentially, or is he not? And I want to answer that question. Well, I want to talk about this in kind of a different way. We see what happens to nations that have their own central banks, right? Look to North Korea, look to Venezuela, things like this. But the point that I want to make is there is still, whether Putin is in with the deep state globalists or whether he is an enemy of the deep state globalists, there's still tension, and that's certain. One of the articles that I covered yesterday was about the standoff between the U.S. and Russian military in Syria over the weekend. And it was actually pretty I had written about it, and I looked at these two videos, and this is something where there could be a serious mistake that could spark something much bigger on an international geopolitical incident, because you're talking about 50 cows mounted. I don't know what the Russian versions were, but you're talking about tactical up-armored military vehicles in a standoff, U.S. and Russian forces right there. But here's my point with that. If you watch the videos, there's only a couple videos, and there's only a couple minutes long, but it's the Russians who are turning around, right? So my point is the U.S. still has the upper edge on this power struggle. Now, as far as internal national power, I mean, that was where the caller was focused on. So I'll let you address that more, but I just wanted to say that there is still this power struggle one way or another, whether Putin's part of it or Putin's against it, between the U.S. and Russia. And it's still playing out, as we saw this weekend in Syria. And whether these moves to fire all, because the speculation, and I guess you could say the hope, is that he's getting rid of all of the U.S. Yes men in the cabinet. That's the purpose of firing all the people, to get rid of all the influence that are the lapdogs essentially from Washington, which would also be the case for nationalizing the central bank. What has exactly happened? I'm not sure what's exactly happened.
Yeah. So my personal opinion about this whole reshuffling of the deck, basically what's going on within the government there, and I don't find it to be coincidental whatsoever that along with this reshuffling of the deck, I think it was last year, 2 years ago, President Xi Jinping also shuffled the deck as well and gave himself pretty much a lifelong term. And so when you have the two opposing nations that's teamed up, they got all types of partnerships, bilateral deals, swaps, and all types of cooperation amongst themselves. They're both shuffling the deck. Clearly, whatever they're shuffling it for is to better their position for whatever's going to be rolled out within this next couple of months, years, or whatever, to put themselves as leaders in much more favorable standings with their population as the changes occurs. And so I'm not sure exactly what the long-term effect will be from Russia as far as him firing and then restructuring the government, because I heard something about wanting to have more of a parliamentary type of style government, but yet he's also quoted as saying this is going to be his last term, which ends in 4 years, I think. So I think between what's going on with China and Russia cooperating together, the shuffling of the deck, it equals some type of new issuance of an interconnected government over there. Like, I can see China and Russia deciding to really merge their forces even more by some type of merger. And I know I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but yet I know from a biblical standpoint, China and Russia, Gog and Magog, they in the latter parts of whatever, they become very buddy, and I see that forming right now. So I'm gonna stop right there and just let you guys speculate. But there's no reshuffling of the deck without an ultimate purpose. And everything they do is always against whatever we're doing over here. So it's always to better them. And then as far as Russia turning around, as you said, or backing down, it's no doubt in my mind that Putin has tried to be a peacemaker over the last two administrations especially, and just being an overseer, letting his presence be felt, letting the world know that we're not as inferior to the world, to the U.S. as everyone thinks we are. We have hypersonic, all types of technology. I think their technological advancements far outsees ours, according to what we've been told. But it's one of the things where they show their presence, but they don't want to show force. They just let the world know that they're not backing down, and you can't overrun all these countries without there being probably some issues. So
yes, I fully do believe that their forces can military our forces as far as their technology. When you see those Russian fighter jets flying 50 feet from U.S. aircraft carriers, that does not happen unless you have superior technology. That does not happen in this era of electronic warfare. Yeah. So I do personally believe that Russia has better weapon systems than the United States, because the other thing is the military-industrial complex has squandered it all and enriched themselves at the expense of developing military technology. So now we're trying to fight from behind. Even though we're still the bully on the playground, we're the one that are in the disadvantage here.
Yeah.
And the reason why I said it could spark something bigger is because that's we're never going to know the whole story about this Ukrainian jetliner that got shot down, but Iran said they blew it up by mistake. So my point is that was a muddy road. There's the roar of diesel engines. People are shouting. It's a foreign language. It's bad weather conditions. What if a couple low flying helicopters came in and someone mistaked it for close air support, right? And then all of a sudden you got 50 cows firing off. And I mean, this is something that, it's a hot mess. It's still a hot mess. And Syria's not fixed. The Middle East is not fixed. It's kind of turning away from that on the news. But, I mean, there's just so many powder kegs all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, so with that being the case, we can go on forever and ever. It's speculating and just assuming what's going on out there. Time will reveal exactly what's going on. So between now and then, do the best you can. Stay prayed up and stay active and attentive to everything around you. And just pray for the best. That's all we can do at this current point. So that being the case, it's been great hanging out this afternoon. Looking forward to coming back on Wednesday. Going to be a little bit of a different stream. We'll keep you guys up to date on that one. But that being the case, be blessed, be safe, and we will see you guys later.